Hello, welcome to Manibil. I'm diving into a bit more of Stefan Molyneux today, and I am, let's say, reviewing or commenting on a few aspects of a recent video called The Unspeakable Truth About Silicon Valley Bank. And it's not so much about that bank, but more about his ethics and his book UPB, or Universally Preferable Behavior. And it's just like, I mean, every time this dude, he deals with metaphysics, epistemology, objectivity, ethics. I'm usually going to comment on it because it just illuminates how ridiculously bad he is at philosophy, right? And how much he's up his own ass when it comes to his ideas of his own greatness, right? And it's sort of already also clear from these particular aspects I'm going to highlight here. But before I go into poisoning the well, let's just dive in, shall we? First off, I'm going to take a bit from the opening comments from his, and then jump sort of 38 minutes or so. I have marked a place where we are going to dive into UPB. And then I'm going to switch a window in with the free PDF version of his book UPB to reference a few searches I've done, right? Okay, so let's hit it off. Not hit it off. Hit it off is becoming friends, right? Let's hit it.
You guys know I'm your willing slave of philosophy. I am your philosophy man whore. I'm your himbo of reason. Do you want to do SVB and what might happen this week? It's not politics, just economics, really. Although economics and politics you could make. When you were a tech man, did your company store their money at a bank?
Okay, so he's with this sort of always this. It's something I have just, not just, but it's always been there. But in the later years, I have really, come to loathe it, you could say, right? Or be constantly annoyed by it. This sort of, always this sarcasm, right? It's always there. I'm your man whore, or so. It's sort of by overdoing it, he is, in the best of my interpretation, he's trying to get you to accept that he's sort of your servant, you could say. But because it's sort of sarcastic in his way it's put forth, you shouldn't expect him to do that much when it all comes down, right? It's always this way. It's not like, okay, there's a one-off day where he's sort of in his sarcastic mode, or whatever, right? I might have my idiosyncrasies. What's it called? My when I'm going on a limp in having fun on somebody else's account. Usually it's when I'm criticizing somebody. When I criticize somebody or deconstruct, I always start with the arguments. And as I progress and the arguments become more and more ridiculous, at some point I might start laughing at them, right? Which is fair, right? I don't start laughing and then explain afterwards, right? That would be unfair, you could say, right? It would be a fallacious way of approaching stuff. But I have noticed that he always does this. It's never with a straight, open, neutral face, you could say. It's always this sort of sophist, sarcastic, what term would you put on it, right? And it's fucking annoying. And I find it to be passive aggressive, right? It's in a passive aggressive. It's saying, "Oh, I'm so open to your philosophy, but I am sarcastic about it. So you don't know where you have him, right? You don't know what to expect with him." And if he's your philosophical man whore, he should be, surfacing your philosophical questions. Well, let's see if he does that, right? Because when we go to 38, 35, let me see if I can. I have a few windows open here, so it might be a little. My laptop isn't isn't possibly the fastest computer in the world. 38. That was a pretty decent shot. I have to hang on. There we have it. Let's see. Come on. Come on. Oh, why won't it play? That's about...
Hi, Steph. In your previous live stream, you mentioned that the alleviation of suffering isn't a uniquely human aim and cannot therefore be considered a core part of philosophical inquiry. Is this a mischaracterization of your position? If so, can you talk about the core goal of UPB if it isn't related to alleviating suffering? So one way that you're very concerned about alleviating suffering. So one thing you could do to alleviate suffering is read a free fucking book called UPB. It's free. It's totally free. You can get it on an audiobook. I'll read it to you. I'll sit by your bedside.
So this is again, he's not really a man whore, right? In this regard. Whatever he meant by man whore, right? Then he can always, if someone says, but you said you would want to answer any question. Yeah, but man whore was just me being, right, making a joke sort of, right? This kind of, that's a dishonest approach to, I mean, if ethics isn't one of the most important aspects in your philosophy, I don't know what is, right? Everything is important in philosophy. But it's not like, first of all, he says he wants to answer people's questions. And then when they ask a very, very concerned question about his UPB, he basically says, go and read my fucking book, you idiot, right?
And read the entire fucking book to you, just for free. Absolutely, no cost, no obligation. You can stop at any time you want. But you know what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to explain UPB, because the whole point I wrote the damn book and released it for free was to avoid exactly these kinds of conversations.
Okay, so what do you want to have a conversation? I never see any conversation with him. I only see him talking to himself and his microphone, and there might be some chat somewhere where he's getting questions, but I wouldn't call this a conversation, right? He's basically talking to himself in his own echo chamber, right? Now, if you write a book and people have questions about it, it might not point to people being stupid, but it might point, it's possible, right? That there's actually a problem with your book. There might be a problem, right? People have been pounding on your door to tell you your book, it sucks. For years, man. Not least with the dude, Rationality Rules, who basically said he had fallacies in all your core proofs of this book of yours, right? At another point, I might add, from that particular debate with Rationality Rules 4 years ago or whatever, right? That you said, well, but my core proofs, I have supporting arguments somewhere else in the book, and I can't bring this book up here, right? So, by that comment, you were basically saying that if there's something you don't understand in some particular part of the book, there's somewhere else in the book you need to go and look for a clarification of whatever it is, and that goes even for core proofs that is mentioned in this fucking book, right? So, what are you actually going to discuss or have conversations about in this? You only, when people ask you about your musical preferences or some other ridiculous, useless topic that doesn't deal with any kind of core philosophy. Is that your conversation? You should grab this opportunity to explain to the world what the hell is going on in this. Or is the point actually that you are sick and tired of explaining UPB, right? You're sick and tired that people don't understand your brilliant philosophy. The holy grail of philosophy that you wrote 15 years ago, and you haven't changed a comma from this revision 1, right? It's perfect. If you don't understand it, there's something wrong with you. Go back and read the book, and when I think if he hasn't said it already, then the question asker, what's it called? The person asking the question says, "Well, I have read the book," and then he says, "No, you haven't read the book, right?"
It's insulting. And again, I say this with
Is it insulting to have questions about your fucking book? You just asked. You just told people you're their man whore. You're asking. You let them. They can. I mean, that's how I understand it, right? They can ask any question, but they can't ask about your fucking book, right? Or when I was asking about your metaphysics, you freaked out and started yelling at me and muted me out of the conversation. That's the level of discourse you're capable of, right? It just goes to show that you haven't got a fucking clue what you're doing, right? You're not a good philosopher. You're tired of having to explain the same old shit to people because they don't understand what you're saying. And it might be because it sucks. You're actually not doing any rigid philosophy in your ethics book, or, the particular philosophy called ethics, right? I would say you're not even doing ethics in your book on ethics. And if you don't trust me, Stefan Molyneux, or the listeners here, right? Go listen to my deconstruction of his book, Universally Preferable Behavior, where I go through the first part of his book, which is sort of the proof of his system, right? Where I basically tears it apart and illuminates how ridiculously stupid it is, right? So, I don't remember the exact title. There's a series of, I think there are 13 or 14 parts or something like that, right? I go sentence by sentence, basically, right? And it's a pile of junk, right? It's so lame that it's no wonder that people have questions about it, right? And what can I say, man? I mean, oh, you come in and ask me questions. I'm your man whore. Oh, you ask question about my book? Get out of here, man. But I read your book. No, you didn't. You didn't read my book. I'm tired of answering questions about my perfect morality. What an fucking megalomaniacal asshole, right?
love, and I say this with great care and concern for your happiness.
Oh, I'm virtue signaling now. Yes, I'm so caring about you. Yes. Would you please get out of my forum? All my congregation might be, start asking questions also. I don't like that. They just need to accept my philosophy, right?
Read the book, then ask me some questions. Read the book, make some notes, and ask me some questions. But don't ask me to explain the entire concept of UPB for free.
The entire concept. It just asks about, human suffering versus UPB. What's the relation? Maybe a clarification. Grab the chance to illuminate people rather than you jump onto them because your UPB sucks like a fucking vacuum, right? It's stupid, man, right? It's some of the most ridiculously bad philosophy I've ever read, right? I've ever seen, right? There might be something in there that is decent, but I wouldn't trust it for my life, right? Because it's so badly argued. It's all over the place. So in one moment he talks about the history lessons and then invents something called the middle truths that nobody had heard about, and then he stops talking about middle truths, 20 pages in, and you never hear about it again, and so on, right? I mean, it's an endless tirade of stupidity. It's like reading the Mein Kampf or something that is so ridiculously badly written by a crazy person. I'm sorry to compare it to this, right? But it's what I've heard. I haven't read that stupid Adolf book, right? But from what I've heard, it's all over the place. It's written by a madman, right? And it's the same kind of feeling I get reading his book. It's like somebody just brain farting onto their typewriter, right? Without having any coherent idea of structure or what is necessary to explain this or that or the other, right? He just throws words at you, right? No wonder people have questions about it, right? And I would even go so far as saying, showing the respect that he gets from people asking a question about it is more than it deserves. It should be ignored, if anything, right? That's how bad it is, right? So please look up my deconstruction of Stefan Molyneux's book, Universally Preferable Behavior, right? Okay.
I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
You could be wrong. I missed this, but I need to go back a bit.
Ask me some questions, but don't ask me to explain the entire concept of UPB for free. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Nope, haven't even tipped, right? So you haven't given me a...
So you have to tip before you ask a question? Oh, so he's sitting there, you haven't tipped. Oh, so I'm not going to answer the question. No. I'm your man whore, but you have to pay me first before I suck your philosophical dick, right? Oh, man, right? I hope he just gets more and more obscure by behaving like this, right? And I think he doesn't have any choice, because I think he is borderline going out of philosophy, right? I think he needs this shit to have something to do instead of just being a stay-at-home dad, right? Because he's coming to the end of his time as a stay-at-home dad, and what can he possibly do after this? Nobody wants his stupid philosophy, and nobody seems to read his novels, right? You have to give it to his congregation for free. Nobody else wants to publish it, apparently, right? Otherwise, he would go for some kind of official publisher or self-publish it in order to make money on Amazon, whatever, right? I will have to deduce that it's so badly written that nobody wants it.
Tip, and you're asking me to explain something to you for free.
For free? But you said in the introduction, you said you were a man whore, but you forgot to mention that you had to pay for your services, right? Oh, man, I mean, who in the fucking wide world would? I mean, I seem to remember when I started listening in the early days to Stefan Molyneux in around 2011 or sometime back then, right? It seems that he was less soaked in this megalomania here, right? It seems like he's losing his marbles or something like that, right? I mean, who in the fucking wide world would attack his listeners like this? Unless he had, a war chest of, millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. That he doesn't have to do this. He does it only to, polish his own ego, right? Something like that. Otherwise, why would he do it? He would just call it a day, say, I'm a millionaire in Bitcoin, right? I'm going to be a novelist or whatever, right? Certainly, he doesn't have to care for his customers here, right? And he possibly wants to get rid of anybody asking any questions about his philosophy. It's a one-way communication, this, right? He is standing from up on high. He has received, when you're paying, you are tipping him, you are paying to philosophy. So he is speaking on the behalf of philosophy. He's basically an incarnation, the only one who can tell you about philosophy. So you have to pay him. And if you have particular questions, you need to pay first, right? He's a man whore.
When there's a free book that you can get. You are assuming that I'm asking the question because I haven't read the book. I have read the book. No, you haven't.
So should we deal with knowledge here? Is this a claim of knowledge that he hasn't? So Stefan Molyneux could just be, even though the one who's claiming to have read the book states that he has read the book, And then Stefan Molyneux can say, of course, no, you haven't read the book, right? As if it's some kind of insight, a deep knowledge he has, right? So what he's saying that he has read the book but not understood the book, right? Just because he asks a question, he needs to reread the fucking book. Get what a holy shit! What an asshole, man! Right? Oh.
Sorry. No, I just...
What about all these people who, back in the day were supporting him and donating to him? And then when I come back and listen to him now and see what kind of idiot he is, right? I always think, holy shit, why did I spend money on this idiot, right?
I mean, or maybe you skimmed it or whatever, right? But the idea...
Or maybe, so you're just sort of fabulating about, you're straw manning here, right? It's basically, how could he possibly know how this guy said he read it. And then now he claims that, you just skimmed it. And something. Fucking asshole, right? Strawman argument.
That
fucking master sophist.
UPB is related to alleviating suffering. The core goal of UPB is related to alleviating suffering. It's nowhere in the book. To my memory, I could be completely...
Oh, it's nowhere in the book?
Completely wrong about this. I mean, obviously I wrote the thing like 14 years ago, so...
Oh, I could be wrong. So you could be wrong. But he is not allowed to be wrong, right? But you can be wrong. It's only 14 years. You haven't possibly read it since then. Because you wrote the book. You don't have to go back. It's perfect. It's the holy grail of philosophy. Don't you know? So he doesn't even remember whether or not he's talking about suffering. Well, let me help you get your memory going here, right? So I hope that this is clearly shown in the video, and that I can read it while no, not this one. Let me see if I can find it. Here it is. When you search for the term suffer, in the book Universal Preferable Behavior, a proof of secular ethics, a rational proof, that 3 times that the term suffer in its incarnations appears in his book Universal Preferable Behavior. Okay, there's one part here. Let me see. I probably need to make it slightly smaller this way. Yes. Okay, it says, this book will focus on exposing and destroying these false middle truths. Yeah, just like I told you about before, right? Middle truth. I mean, Stefan Molyneux is the only one in the history of, writing or, presenting philosophy who has ever used the term middle truths, right? So if you want to understand what middle truths is, this is the only place to get it, right? Okay. I believe that mankind suffers endlessly under the tyranny of false ethical middle truths, which justify the destructive worldviews of religious superstition, secular despotism, and the cult of the family. Okay, so mankind is suffering endlessly, right? Okay, he didn't remember that he talked about suffering, but apparently he talked about endless suffering of mankind because of middle truths, right? So you could very well say that he's very concerned about human suffering, right? I mean, would he be able? Yeah, possibly he has a laptop in front of him, or a desktop computer or something. He could have all his PDFs ready to go, right? Put in a term suffer in the case as I've done here, right? I prepared it, but it wouldn't take me much longer to open it up if I had he's a millionaire in Bitcoin, so he would be able to have the fastest computer on the planet, right? And okay, let's see the second one. In this situation, we can have some sympathy for the man whose wallet is stolen in the park, or the woman who is attacked at the frat party, or the wife who is beaten by her husband. But at the same time, we would have some significant questions regarding their role or complicity in the wrongs they have suffered. Okay, so you can suffer from wrongs. Now, wrong is another term, one of the terms for appealing to some morality. Wrongness is appealing to immorality, right? And you can suffer from immorality. So he is concerned with morality causing suffering, right? You can't understand it any other way unless you absolutely want to in a sophist manner, right? Okay, so I need to see if I can. This one is. I have to see if I can find the. Sorry about this. Oh man. Let me see. If I can find the complete. Sorry about my. Yes, I'm not sure about the chapters here. Let me see if I can. Universality and exceptions. Okay, the purpose and the dangers. I don't know what exactly. These are bad titles or headlines, right? Okay, it's from here. Of course, the danger always exists that an immoral person. Okay, there are apparently persons that are sort of labeled as immoral, right? They're just going around that. Oh, look, there's an immoral person. Will attack you for his own hedonistic purposes. It could also be the case that despite clean and healthy living, you may be struck down by cancer before your time. The former does not make the science of morality irrelevant any more than the latter makes the science of medicine, nutrition, and exercise irrelevant. One demonstrable effect of a rational science of morality must be to reduce the chances of suffering immoral actions such as theft, murder, and rape. And it is by this criterion we shall also judge the moral rules proposed in part 3 of this book. Maybe I need to go back and deconstruct part 2 and part 3 of this book, right? To make a complete session. Okay, so one demonstrable effect of a rational science of morality must be to reduce. Let me see if is it on the. Doesn't matter, right? Okay, I don't think it's on the screen, but I'm screwing around with this. I should just have made a copy paste, right? Okay. Bad planning. Of course, the danger. One demonstrable effect of a rational science of morality must be to reduce your chances of suffering immoral actions such as theft, murder, and rape, right? Suffering immoral, right? So it's basically 3 times he writes about suffering in his book, and he can't remember any of it, right? Now, you might say, well, okay, he doesn't read his own books every day, right? But if I had written the holy grail of philosophy, I think I would return to my book now and then. If I got some new ideas or some feedback from listeners and criticizers, critics, what is it? Critics, right? And so on. And I might say, I might actually change this, and it doesn't work, and that doesn't work. And maybe some references, if I say in my book, for instance, I don't need to do this particular philosophy before we get going. I might put in a link or a reference to somewhere people can actually go if they want that piece of philosophy before they head into this part of the philosophy, right? Because ethics is the crowning achievement of when you have done metaphysics, epistemology, and objectivity, in my opinion, right? So these aspects need to be dealt with in order to make sure that you're not screwing around the people in your ethics. But he just says, well, I don't need to do that. So let me just get going because I'm so busy, right? So let's see what he has to say.
But I think I've always talked about how philosophy brings a massive amount of suffering. My very first book on Truth, the Tyranny of Illusion was largely about the suffering that philosophy will bring to you, and that this is an extreme sport that will cause.
No, but he doesn't talk about what doing philosophy might bring of suffering. It's about when you have the morality or the moral principle, how does that relate to suffering, right? It's not doing the philosophy, right? So he's sort of red herringing. Otherwise, he just doesn't understand what the caller wants to talk about, right?
Cause a lot of pain before it gives you great pleasure. So I don't. The idea that you've read my book on morals and then think it's related. Well, the core goal. Could you talk about the core goal of UPB if it isn't related to alleviating suffering? Okay. So what is the core goal of UPB? You've read the book, right? Say you've read the book. I'm absolutely happy to have you prove, right? What is the core goal of UPB? Everyone out there, you can, right? This guy,
UPB, isn't it? Yeah. Good question. I'm not sure what the hell the goal is, right? So you're putting the question back at the caller, right? And say, yeah, well then you have to present, and then so the caller could steel man somehow, right? And then you could sort of pull him down and say, no, that's not what it is. Go away, you stupid idiot, right? So he's avoiding illuminating people of how bad he is at doing philosophy, right? By pretending that the callers are not doing their job correctly or they're not approaching his philosophy correctly or something like that. It's a recurring theme. When they come and say, oh, your new novel is so great. Oh, thank you. Oh, give me some more of that. Oh, I love vanity. Oh. Are you asking questions about my morality book? You haven't read the book. Yes, I have read the book. No, you haven't read the book. And go, you've done it incorrectly. Go back and shut the fuck up and go away, right?
Got your username. I'm not trying to call you out, show your work on the blackboard, but you claim to have read the book, so where is alleviating suffering mentioned in the book?
I just mentioned it, right? Maybe he says that alleviating suffering, right? But it's sort of built into when you talk about these aspects I just mentioned before, right? Now I'm close the app that I used to show you. No, I haven't. When he said one demonstrated effect of rational science of morality must be to reduce your chances of suffering. Is that another way of saying alleviating suffering? Right? Wouldn't that be sort of a purpose? And it is by this criterion, alleviating suffering, that we shall also judge them all rules proposed in part 3 of the book. So it's about alleviating suffering, isn't it? Isn't that the goal? You fucking stupid asshole, man.
If you say you've done something, I have the right.
Basically, he says he doesn't even know what the hell he's writing in his book, right? He doesn't have a fucking clue what he's doing, right? All his eyes are flickering left and right, and he's sort of clearly annoyed and clearly, stressed or, right? He's not resting in himself here, right? He comes across to me now as somebody who think of himself as the greatest philosopher of all time, while the reality is he's basically not really a philosopher, right? He's just a megalomaniacal sophist who needs philosophy in order to cushion his bad psychology, right? He doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't even remember what he has been doing, right? This, the greatest thing since Socrates and sliced bread, the holy grail of philosophy, he doesn't even remember mentioning 3 times in his book that is about alleviating suffering. Formulated this or the other way, right? How much clear can you be talking about alleviating suffering without saying it explicitly, that a rational science of morality must be to reduce your chances of suffering immoral actions. So it must be about alleviating suffering. Right? Give me a fucking break, man.
Right to ask for some sort of evidence, right? That's you've made an evidentiary claim, so I'm asking for evidence. So,
Oh, you made an evidence. Oh, you made a claim. Yeah, you have to go back. Yeah, you have to do the work. Yeah, you shouldn't come here on my channel and start making me work for free for you, right? You're just trying to, get me to work, and then you're going, when I've done several hours of work, you're just going to say, I don't buy that. And then I've wasted 2 hours of my very important life, right? Duh.
what is the core goal of UPB? What's the purpose? Why did I write the book?
But only you can know that, you fucking moron, right? That's what he's asking implicitly. Give me your take on why you did this. Why are you asking your callers to tell you what it is? Is it so you can pull them down, right? Lure them into giving their version and then tell them, you're stupid, go away. What a sophist, man.
All right, well, while he types this, somebody says, thanks for that answer. For the longest time, I was banging around in the dark thinking I'd just become a producer randomly. I've made a shift in my perspective in the last 2 years, and your answer puts a lot into focus. Time to set cutoffs and work my ass off. Thank you for all your work. Yeah, you can't manage what you can't measure, right? So, when I would have employees and they'd say, well, I worked to optimize such and such, right? It's like, okay, where's the proof, right? I'm an empiricist. Where's the proof? Well, I proactively energize the managerial matrix towards optimizing sublet, right? Okay, well, what's measurable? I mean, what I did as a coder was measurable. Did the code compile? Then did it achieve the stated goals in a efficient manner? Yeah, it's measurable. Salespeople, I would say the salespeople are measurable. Did you make a sale? The marketing people, yeah, to some degree, measurable, which is we aim to.
How do you measure if people understand your ethics, right? How do you measure that? How many times they ask a question about UPB? I mean, the simple argument that I can identify in it is that if you argue against me, I'm right. If you try to argue in any way, if you open your mouth, you're basically proved ethics, right? That's a very, very, very simplistic way of putting it. It should be more elaborate than that, you could say, right? But he spends, the first 80 pages trying to convince you of this, using all sorts of weird shit that you don't need in order to get there, right? In order to fill up at least some pages to make it look like you need to write a book about this, right? He can do it on a one page of this thing here, right? Called UPB. I would say that you could do that in a one-pager, but that doesn't make a book, and it doesn't make it look like it's serious, and so on, right? Yeah, I lost my train of thought.
Penetrate this market segment, and it's going to improve our sales, and this is the most important market segment to.
Yeah. So he comes with all sort of sophistry about how you should do this. In order to do it, he's just asking you a simple question about your baby, your holy grail called philosophy. You should be, man, one who can actually philosophize and might actually come on the show and discuss these things with me. I have a chance to show how good I am at. No. He's going to, tear him down instead, right? And use him to scare the rest of the congregation into submission. So they feel, okay, I better not ask these kinds of questions because I'm going to be thrown out of it. Yes, you're great, Mr. Stefan Molyneux. You're great. Yeah, your last book, your latest novel was so great. You're so... Fuck off.
To improve our sales, that's measurable, right? HR, not so measurable, right? But... the finance, accounting department is, we aim to pay taxes, do everything to stay within compliance and so on. Engineering is measurable. Yeah, did it explode or not? Yeah, it's all measurable, right? And everything always ends up being measurable, right? Because if a company doesn't measure anything, then it can't achieve any productive goals. How do you know if you're winning? How do you know if you're doing well? How do you know if you got to measure these things? You got to have a goal. You got to have a plan. Got to have a plan. Got to have a 6-month plan, a 1-year.
How do you measure if your UPB is working? What? How do you measure the success of UPB? Well, when people ask questions about it, right, they want to reach that success pinnacle that you apparently seem to have reached before you wrote the book, right? They want to get there also. And when they start to ask questions, you basically shout at them and call them idiots and say that even when they state that they have read the book, you tell them they haven't read the book. What kind of management approach is that, right? That's an asshole approach. It's because it's your book, right? You wrote it. You're so great. You are Mr. Philosophy, right? Nobody should come in and ask questions about it. They should just read it and fucking accept it because it's so great, right? And then when you open the book, it's like opening, a 6-year-old's child drawing book, right? It's on that level, in an analogy to it, right? It's like, what is this, the fucking holy grail, man, right? It's a pile of junk.
Plan of 5. You got to have a plan. I got a 5-year plan. I'm making things up as I go along. I mean, sometimes, obviously, because to be spontaneous, but everything's measurable. So when people come up with things that aren't measurable, I just know that they're hiding from accountability, right? My job description is to optimize the business processes of delivering X, Y, and Z, right? Oh, okay. So you must have measured how long it took to deliver X, Y, and Z before, and then afterwards and show how your plan achieved that, right? Oh, well, we cut the production time in half. Fantastic. Good for you, man. Let's keep going, right? But when people say, and you saw this with Elon Musk recently, but yeah, when people say, I optimize the delivery systems for X, Y, and Z architecture, it's like, okay, well, show me the numbers. Show me the measure.
Yeah, show me the numbers that there's some traction, just a minuscule traction anywhere about UPB, right? If you're Mr. Market thing here, right? Mr. Manager, pretend to be, right? Apparently. Where's the traction in UPB? Show it to me, right? 15 years, you haven't even made revision 2 yet, right? It has been deconstructed by me, at least the first part. It has been criticized left and right by people. And you are like a stone wall. It's like it's not valid. Their criticism isn't valid, right? You are the problem, right? If you push this shit book, right? You keep pushing it as if it's the Holy Grail. You are inhibiting good philosophy this way. You should pull the ship down and say, I have to go back to the drawing board and do something better than this. It fucking sucks. You're an insult to good philosophy, man, right? And here you are attacking an honest listener, asking questions about your fucking Holy Grail, baby. And then you're shitting on him, right? What a pathetic loser mentality, right? And then you're shrouding yourself. Yeah, I used to be a manager. Yeah, and you have to manage. And you have to measure. You have to. Man, give me a fucking break.
Measurements. And if it's not measured, then it's just like, okay, well, you're just making up nonsense and noise to avoid accountability. Right? And in the business world, everyone should be fired whose work can't be measured. Every single person should be fired whose work can't be measured.
Or you should help them measure it, right? Because there are aspects you can't measure. You can't measure people's happiness, right? They have tried this so many times, right? And making tables and spreadsheets of shit like that, right? You can't measure people's happiness. And it's people's happiness in the workplace that makes them go the extra mile when needed, right? If they're not happy, they're not going to do anything more than they have to, right? You can't fucking measure happiness. You say it yourself. Your own feelings is not philosophy. And then you want to go and measure it. Give me a fucking break, man.
Measured. And of course, the theory that there's all this bigotry out there and, DEI eliminates that, therefore it's going to improve profitability. Okay, that's a theory, and it's a fine theory. I disagree with it, but it's a fine theory. Okay, well, how are we going to measure that? How are we going to measure whether your theory is correct? Well, productivity per employee before DEI is, X. You get about $1 million worth of productivity out of your average.
It's also this. He pulls out something that could be a contrary argument, or something that sounds like he's on top of things here, right? And it demands certain. You should adhere to this, adhere to that, and in 2 weeks it's something different you have to do, right? Something completely different. I mean, basically, much of what he does in this channel is not based on measuring shit, right? It's based on his own emotional stance, or his modes, his level of, I feel this, and I think this, and I think that, and so on. It can't be measured. You can't basically measure philosophy. I would even go as far as say it's probably something like, because you can't measure it, you need to do philosophy, right? Isn't that the name of the game here on your channel? Your channel, Free Domain Philosophy.
Mid-level, mid to high level tech worker. You get about $1 million worth of productivity a year.
Oh, man.
Depends on the industry, but that's a fairly decent guideline. And so we've gone from 1 million to 1.3 million.
So because you were, lucky to be in a position where you could create value along the lines of $1 million a year, therefore this guy has to read the book again. But what is the connection here, right? It's ridiculous, man, right? I would advise that fine young gentleman or woman, whoever it was, asking the question, please go and listen to my deconstruction of UBB and get to at least some good criticism of the shit he tries to force feed you, right? Or he attempts to. It's not force feeding it. That wouldn't be right to say, right? But it's like people are reading books by their own free will, so to say, right? And if you read a book and you have a sense there might be something there, but you're not really sure what the hell you wrote, right? Or you read, and then you have a chance to ask the author questions about it. Wouldn't you think that the author would be joyful about receiving a question about his book, right? If I've written a book about morality or something else, for that case, right, I would love to spend some time discussing this, because I would be promoting my book, you could say, right? I can understand that. If you're going on 15 years, people are still asking the same basic question about the book. That is kind of annoying. But then the author should say to himself or herself, maybe it's something about the book, not the people asking the questions, right? Maybe there's something about the book that doesn't really, cut the bill, right? It doesn't. It's not good enough, right? Maybe I should spend some of the time doing these lame-ass, novels, right? Do some actually work on my Holy Grail, right? Go back to the drawing board. Maybe optimize it a bit. Maybe figuring out whether or not I've actually done a good job or not. No, that's not what a megalomaniacal person does. They are just going to say there's something wrong with you, because you don't understand my perfect book.
$1 million worth of billable productivity after we implemented these standards. And the cost of implementing these standards was far lower than the productivity gain that we had. So that's your test, right? Yeah. So, but of course, there's all these people who want to make a lot of money, and the way that why they're so aggressive in their ideology is they're not measurable in their output. Yeah, they
Sometimes, if you have a big company, people are making certain small details of a bigger picture, right? If your boss tells you to make a spreadsheet of the number of people and descriptions of how much education they need and so on, and then you spend 10 hours doing that, whatever it takes, and then how do you measure the value of that? How the hell do you measure the value of that? Because it's a much bigger picture that spans years and lots of people, and people are going to quit or be hired and into the system and so in and out, and you can measure this, man, right? And any attempt to put some measurement on it is futile. You can't trust the measurement then, right? And this sort of, hey, it's objective. The reality is 100%. You need some, measurement. Otherwise, I'm not trusting it, right? And it's also this, okay, you're talking about morality here, right? You're talking about ethics. Ethics is not something you measure, right? How do you measure suffering, right? Are you going to accept, if you say, yeah, I am measuring 9 on suffering scale, right? How would you do that, man, right? Or are you talking about some new subject now? You're not really talking about suffering and ethics anymore. I don't know. It's just hard to follow this line of argumentation.
Everybody who promotes ideology in the absence of actual measurements is just aggressively avoiding accountability in order to profit. They are actually exploiting, right? This is why the left is, these capitalist exploiters. It's like, well, you all are proposing stuff that can't be measured and making huge salaries and all of that. And yeah. All right, let's see here. Let me get to the answer. Okay, so he says, my understanding of the UPB, all right. My understanding of the UPB is that its core goal is to provide a universal framework for morality that solves the problem of tribal warfare and in-group preferences while deciding our obligations to one another. Solves the problem of tribal warfare and in...
So now he's going to, he got exactly what he wanted, right? He got exactly what he wanted. Now he's going to say he's strawmanning him, and he's saying that's not what the purpose is. I'm going to pull him down and then use that as a lever to let the other listeners understand that you shouldn't challenge him because you're going to be ridiculed or, publicly shamed, whatever, right?
Group preferences. No, I don't remember talking about that. I don't know how you can... all of evolution is based on in-group preferences. UPB is not designed to eliminate human nature, right? In-group preferences is a fundamental function of evolution. And, I'm not doing the Marxist thing in any of my philosophy where I just say, well, we can completely rewrite human nature from the ground up based on ideology. And, right, we can remove the...
If Stefan Molyneux hasn't made a explicit statement about the purpose of his ethics, then he can't demand that the listener can come up with an explanation of this. It has to be some kind of interpretation. And now he's going to pull that interpretation apart in order to tell everybody how stupid that guy is, challenging his perfect ethics, right? This is what a sophist does. This is pure, unadulterated sophistry, right? Just listen closely to how this is done so you can avoid it another day, right?
Profit incentive, everybody will still work hard. It's like now the profit incentive is what drives us. So, solves the problem of tribal warfare. Don't know about that. In-group preferences when deciding our obligations to one another? No. A universal framework for morality. So here's the thing, right? So UPB, universally preferable behavior. Well, it's a universal framework for morality. You're basically just using a synonym argument, right? Just using a synonym argument.
Okay, so he's not satisfied with the definition, right? So he's gonna dismiss him, apparently, right? I don't remember exactly how this unfolds from here on, right? But it sounds very much like, trying to get the other person to frame it and then say you're framing it incorrectly and therefore you don't understand what you're talking about, so I don't have to listen to you, right? This is how to get rid of people when you're in a sort of a sophist, cultish kind of environment where this guy is the only one who can tell you about how it is. Any kind of criticism is eradicated, right?
Which is, you've just given me some synonyms for UPB, universally preferable behavior. Well, it's called universally preferable behavior, a rational proof of secular ethics. And you said, well, the goal is to provide a universal framework for morality. It's like, well, what's the book The Three Musketeers about? Well, it's about these three guys who are musketeers. And it's like, that's it. So you just take the title and set it slightly differently or whatever, right? So, yeah, I mean, restating UPB in a synonym argument doesn't add anything. And then...
So now he has asked the caller to give a definition, right? Now he should jump in and give you the correct understanding of what it is about, right? And regard to suffering, because that was the question.
Saying that it solves the problem of tribal warfare and in-group preferences when deciding our obligations to one another. No. And morality fundamentally is not about our obligations to one another. It's about our obligations towards universality. So, look, just read it again. That's fine.
Just read the 180 pages again, right? You stupid asshole, right? You I can't answer this question. Just go and read the fucking book again, right? Well, what a disgusting way of treating your customers, right? Fuck off, man, right? I mean, this is ridiculous.
But he says, a rational proof for secular ethics. If you propose a moral theory, it must be universal. Yeah, that which is claimed to be universal has to be universal. That's all. If it's not universal, it's not morality. If it is universal, you can't create exceptions like the state or whatever, right? So.
But so why is there a state then? So there's some people calling themselves the state, right? So why is it there if it's immoral? How does it come about? Well, what's the mechanism? What's the dynamics in it, right? What do I do about it? What do I do about it? It's not enough just to say, this person over there saying he's the state is immoral because universality. Okay, what do I do about it, right? What the fuck do I do about it, right? I'm suffering because of it.
Somebody says, I understand. I recently got my music into a music library for TV ads, etc. That is measurable. So I just keep pushing. What? Let's see here. So somebody says, I recently got my music into a music library for TV ads. That is measurable. So I just keep pushing. No, that's not measurable.
Now we're doing this straw man red herring thing here, right? This is how he's screwing around with his audience, and he's basically, it seems he won't come back to.
I'm sorry,
to UPB again, right? Let's
hate
hear.
To be what seems to be Mr. Entrepreneurial objectivity, but no. The fact that you got your music into a music library for TV ads, etc., the fact that you organized your music library is not measurable. You say, well, but it wasn't before, now it is. It's not measurable. It's not measurable. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, right? I've been an entrepreneur for like,
oh, yes.
I don't know.
Oh, yes. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm so perfect. I'm measuring everything that can be measured.
Gosh, what is it? Let's say, counting this year.
Oh, this is also entrepreneurship. So you're measuring the quality of your philosophy by the number of donations? So if people send you money, it's because it's good philosophy. I would say it's the opposite. The more money you receive, the less functional your philosophy is, right? Because they need to send money in order for it to become better. If it was perfect, they would say, thank you very much, and go and use it, right? So the more donations you get, the less functional your philosophy is, because they need to give you some money, hoping that it's going to get better in the future, right? Okay, I think I'll stop it here, right? I don't think he's going deeper into the issue. He's just, slamming the face of the listener in order to get rid of them, right? So we've seen this before, and I've deconstructed this type of thing before, right? Okay, please share, like, and subscribe. consider the board, consider donation. Otherwise, see you in the next one. Have a nice day.